Story 1, Mile Marker 9. I picked her up at 11 p.m. on a stretch of highway I'd driven 100 times. She was standing at mile marker 9, no bag, no phone in her hand, thumb out. Young, maybe 20. She looked cold, and I have a daughter, so I pulled over. She got in the back seat without asking if that was okay. I noticed that. Most people take the front. I asked where she was headed. She said the next town. I said that was 40 minutes out. She nodded and looked out the window and didn't say anything else. The radio was low, country station, half static. The road ahead was empty in both directions, and the kind of flat that makes you feel like you're not moving at all, just sitting still while the highway scrolls under you. I tried twice more to start a conversation. Her name, how long she'd been waiting out there. Both times she answered in 3 words or less and went back to the window. I told myself she was tired, scared maybe. A young woman alone at night on a desert highway has every reason not to talk to a stranger who stopped for her. I drove. She was quiet. The miles went by. Then I noticed she wasn't reflected in the window. I looked at the glass on her side, dark highway behind it, my own face faintly visible in the rear view, the glow of the dashboard. But her side, nothing, just road and black sky and the occasional white line disappearing under us. I adjusted the mirror, tilted it down toward the back seat. The seat was empty. I swerved hard, corrected. My hands were shaking when I pulled to the shoulder and turned around completely. She was there, sitting exactly as she had been, hands folded in her lap, looking out the window. But now she turned, and she looked at me for the first time since she got in. Her eyes were wrong in a way I still can't fully describe. Not the color, not the shape, something about the quality of them. Like there was no adjustment happening, no reaction to the light from my phone when I instinctively raised it. They were flat in a way that eyes aren't supposed to be flat. She said, "You can keep driving." Her voice was the same as before, calm, flat, like she was finishing a sentence she'd started an hour ago. I got out of the car. I stood on the shoulder of that highway with trucks blowing past me and the cold coming up off the asphalt, and I did not look back at the car for a long time. When I finally did, the interior light was off. I could see the back seat through the rear window. Empty. I stood there for 20 minutes, maybe more. Then I got back in and drove. I didn't look in the mirror again the whole way home. 2 months later, I drove that road again. Daytime, different reason, couldn't avoid it. When I passed mile marker 9, I saw something on the shoulder I hadn't noticed before. A small roadside memorial, the kind families put up. Flowers in a metal stand, sun-bleached, a laminated photograph tied to a wooden post. I pulled over, I don't know why. I got out and walked to it. The photograph was her, same face, same age. The laminated card beneath it had a name, a date, and 4 words printed in plain black text. Gone but not forgotten. The date was 11 years ago, November, a hit and run on this exact stretch of highway. The driver was never found. I got back in my car and I sat there for a long time before I could make myself start the engine. I haven't driven that highway since. I don't know if I ever will. But sometimes at night, when I'm on a long, empty road and the radio cuts to static, I find myself checking the backseat mirror without meaning to. And I'm always a little surprised when it's empty.
Story 2, The Quiet Man. He flagged me down outside a rest stop in the middle of the Nevada desert at just past 1 a.m. Tall, middle-aged, plain-looking in the way that makes a face hard to remember. Worn jacket, duffel bag over one shoulder. He said his car had broken down 5 miles back and he needed to reach the next exit. I said, "Get in." He sat in the front and looked straight ahead. Quiet, but not uncomfortable quiet. The kind of silence that belongs to someone with a lot on their mind, not someone with nothing to say. Every few minutes, he glanced at the side mirror. I assumed he was watching for his car, making sure he'd noted the right exit. 20 minutes in, I asked what had broken down. He said the alternator. I said that was a bad stretch to have it happen. He said yes and went back to looking at the road. Then he asked, "Did you make any stops recently?" I said just for gas, about 2 hours back. He nodded, slow. Then, "Did anyone approach you at the station?" I thought about it. There had been a man near the pump next to mine who'd asked for a cigarette. I don't smoke. He'd walked away without much reaction, normal enough that I had already half forgotten it. I told him that. He went very still. He said, "What did he look like?" I described the man. Average height, older jacket, darker than this one, baseball cap pulled low. The quiet man beside me was quiet for a long moment after that. Then he said, "That's the third time." I asked what he meant. He said, 3 different people, 3 different gas stations, all on this route, all in the last 2 weeks. Every one of them described the same man. I asked him how he knew that. He didn't answer. He looked at the side mirror again instead. I looked in the rear view. There was a car behind us, far back, maybe a quarter mile, running dark, no headlights on, just the faint shape of it visible because of the moon. I don't know when it had appeared. I hadn't noticed it before, and I'd been watching the road. I sped up. The car kept its distance, exactly its distance, like it was calibrated. I asked the quiet man who he was. He reached into the duffel bag, and I went completely tense. He pulled out a small spiral notebook and wrote something without looking at me, tore the page out and handed it to me. A phone number, and below it, 2 words, "Don't stop." He asked me to drop him at the next exit. I did. He got out, picked up his bag, and walked without looking back toward a dark car idling in the lot of a closed diner. No lights on inside. Engine running. I pulled back onto the highway. I watched my mirrors for the next 4 hours. At some point, the car that had been following me was gone. I don't know when it stopped. I didn't see it leave, didn't see it turn off, didn't see it slow. It was just there, and then it wasn't. When I got home, I called the number on the paper. It rang twice, connected to a voicemail with no greeting, just a tone. I held the phone for a moment, and then hung up. I still have the paper. I've looked at the number 100 times since then, and I've never called it again. I don't know what I'm afraid to hear. What I do know is that I stopped at that same gas station 3 weeks later, different direction, different time of day, and the attendant inside, without me saying anything, looked at me and said, "You're not the first one to come back here asking." I hadn't asked anything yet. I left without getting gas.
Story 3. She asked to be let out. The woman I picked up outside Redfield was carrying a child. A girl, maybe 4 years old, asleep against her shoulder with one arm hanging loose at her side. The woman was standing at the edge of the road in the rain. No jacket, no umbrella. She looked exhausted in the way that goes past tired, the kind of hollow that settles into a person's face when something has been wrong for too long. She asked if I was going toward the lake road. I said I could be. She got in without saying thank you. She sat in the back with the girl and stared straight ahead. I turned the heat up without asking. The rain was heavy and the road was bad, and I focused on driving. After a few miles, she said, "She hasn't woken up in a long time." I thought she meant the girl was a heavy sleeper. I said something about kids being able to sleep through anything. She said, "No, I mean a long time." Something in how she said it made me glance in the rear view. She was stroking the girl's hair with a slow, automatic motion. The girl's face was slack against her shoulder, completely slack, and pale, not sleeping pale, something else, the kind of pale that the dashboard light made impossible to look away from. I asked if everything was okay. She said, She just needs to get home. I asked where home was. She said, "You'll know it when you see it." I kept driving. The lake road was narrow and the trees pressed close on both sides, and the rain made it hard to see more than 30 feet ahead. I became very aware of how far I was from anything. No other cars, no lights through the trees, just the road and the rain, and the two of them in the back seat. I tried twice more to get a location out of her, a street name, a landmark, anything. Both times she looked out the window and said nothing. Then, at a bend in the road, she said, "Here." There was nothing there. Trees on both sides, dense and dark, no break in the tree line, no mailbox, no house visible through the branches. I slowed. I stopped. I said, "I didn't see anything." She opened the door and stepped out into the rain, still holding the girl. She leaned back in and looked at me directly for the first time since she'd gotten in. Her expression was something I don't have a clean word for. Grateful and already gone at the same time, like someone who has already finished saying goodbye and is just waiting for you to understand it. She said, "Thank you for bringing us this far." She closed the door. I watched in my mirrors as she walked toward the trees. She didn't slow at the edge of the tree line. She didn't push branches aside or look for a path. She walked into the darkness at the same pace she'd walked across the road, and the trees took her, the way darkness takes things when there's no light left to follow. I sat there for a long time with the engine running and the rain on the roof. In the morning, I looked up that stretch of Lake Road. It didn't take long. A local news archive 11 years back, a single-car accident on a rainy night in October, a mother and her 4-year-old daughter. The mother had survived, the daughter had not. The accident had happened at a bend in the road. The article included a photograph of the memorial that had been placed there afterward. I recognized the tree line immediately. It was the same bend where she asked me to stop. I've thought about that night more times than I can count. I've thought about the girl's face and the woman's voice and the way she said "a long time" like it meant something specific. I think it did. I think she'd been waiting on that road for 11 years for someone to take them back to the place it happened. And I think, for whatever reason, that night it was me. I don't know if that's comforting or not. I haven't decided yet. Subscribe for more chilling tales.